to not only the state of Colorado, but to our nation. And we have been coming to the floor talking about the increasing prices of energy across America. Since we came back in January, we've taken to this floor to talk about the very poor policies coming out of the administration. And just to give you an example of that, on Inauguration Day of President Obama, AAA says the gasoline prices in America averaged $1.84 a gallon. Today, gasoline prices are averaging across this great land $3.73 a gallon. That's a 102% increase during the Obama administration. But yet, he will claim that, the administration will claim that they've increased domestic energy production. They've increased onshore and offshore drilling, and that this apparently oil and natural gas are just bubbling up out of the ground and providing this. But America, that's not the case. That's not the case. Gas prices are going up simply due to two factors: supply and demand. Those are the things that attribute to the price of a barrel of oil in the world: supply and demand. Now, I admit that world demand is up, even while United States demand is lower than it was in 2008. World demand is up. So that's one factor. But the supply factor. Americans know that we are tremendously dependent on Middle Eastern oil. We've got the resources here in this country. If this administration would just get out of the way and allow us to harvest our natural resources, we would be energy independent. But let me just tell you what the administration apparently has as a policy goal. And this comes from the White House statement on the Keystone Pipeline. And a gentleman from Colorado has heard me say this. I think this is the fourth time, but America needs to hear it again. Because President Obama said this. He said that decisions here in Congress to force the decision on Keystone Pipeline does not change my administration's commitment. This is from the White House website. And I recommend you go look at it for yourself. But it does not change my administration's commitment to American-made energy that creates jobs and, listen closely, reduces our dependence on oil. Now, at one time he's talking about these abundant supplies, this increased onshore and offshore drilling and production in this country, but yet his own words say that commitment to American-made energy that creates jobs and reduces our dependence on oil. Now, when you first heard that, you thought, well, I agree with that. He wants to lessen our dependence on foreign oil or Middle Eastern oil. But no. That's not what he said. He said lessen our dependence on oil, period. Not foreign oil, not Middle Eastern oil. Lessen our dependence on oil. So you take that with his Secretary of Energy, Stephen Chu. Stephen Chu, before he was appointed as Secretary of Energy in this country, said this: somehow we have to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. Now, Europeans in England and Germany and France, they're paying $7, $8, $9 a gallon for gasoline. America, under these policies, that's where we're headed. Under the words of Stephen Chu, the Energy Secretary, said somehow we've got to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline in this country to the levels of Europe. It shouldn't surprise you. That's what they want to do. Lessen our dependence on oil, period. And that's propagating policies and giving money away to companies that supported him in his election campaign. Companies like Solyndra, $535 million gone, America. Your tax dollars that I know you're working hard for every day. In South Carolina, my constituents, they go to work every day. And they earn the hard-earned dollars. They go to work, and they're thinking when they're filling up their gas tank at $3.75 a gallon, $4 a gallon diesel fuel. I drive a diesel, so last week I couldn't fill my truck up because I'm hurting just like other Americans in how much I have to take out of my wallet to fill up my truck and what I could use that money for in other ways, whether it's take my family out to dinner or pay off some debt or do some things that we normally would do with that money. But now we're having to take more dollars out of our pockets to put fuel in our car to drive to work. And so Americans are thinking, how many hours of my work day on my job am I working just to pay for the gasoline I just paid to get to work and to get home? $4 a gallon gasoline for diesel fuel. And America, think about this. Think about the farmers that are putting diesel fuel in their tractors to plant the food that you're going to buy at the grocery store. Input cost. Input cost on the front end affects the price on the back end. But Mr. Chu, Secretary of Energy, said this. He's called for gradually ramping up gasoline taxes over the next 15 years to coax consumers into buying more efficient cars and living in neighborhoods closer to work. This European model where we'll all live close in town and we can walk to work, a bicycle. That's the optimal thing in their eyes. But we don't live that way here in America. We like our freedom. We like to get in our cars. We like to drive ourselves to work. The policy of this administration is affecting what you pay at the pumps, and it's very clear using the President's own words about gasoline and about oil. So, we're seeing rising gasoline prices, but we've got the power to do something about that here in America. We have the capacity, the resources in this country that far exceed what's found in Saudi Arabia. Far exceed by hundreds of billions of barrels of oil more than what exists in the Saudi oil reserves. Here in this country, we've got them. We're buying a lot of oil from Canada. We've talked about Keystone Pipeline. The gentleman from Colorado and I have talked about this numerous times. And instead of pursuing American energy independence, beyond that, why can't we pursue maybe North American energy independence and buy from our largest and best trading partner in Canada if our policies are going to keep us from drilling off our coast in South Carolina or off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi and Texas and places where they're proven reserves and we've been pumping oil for a long time, or going onshore. North Dakota. North Dakota has an energy-driven economy. Their unemployment rate's 3% or less. They're pumping oil out of the Bakken oil fields there in North Dakota, and President Obama's taking credit for increased oil production in North Dakota. But back up, because the oil that's being pumped out of the ground in North Dakota isn't on federal land, and it isn't because of any policies of this administration. The permits were issued during the last administration, the one before that, and we're producing oil on state and private lands in North Dakota. It's not federal lands. It's state lands. It's private lands. Unemployment's 3%, good-paying, long-term jobs, energy-driven economy in North Dakota. But guess what? The Bakken oil field extends beyond the borders of North Dakota, and it goes into Montana and other states. Well, if you go across that artificial border between North Dakota and Montana into the same oil field known as Bakken, you're not going to find any energy production over in Montana. You know why? It's on federal land. And that federal land has been off the table for energy production and energy exploration, but over where it's on state and private land, it's gangbusters. It's going gangbusters, 3% unemployment in North Dakota. That's a telling sign, America, on what you do when you go after your own resources and you produce American resources to meet our American energy needs. I heard the gentleman from Colorado talk about an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and I've heard the President here at the State of the Union say the same thing. But, in my opinion, all-of-the-above energy strategy says, hey, first we're going to take care of a proven technology of oil and natural gas to meet our immediate energy needs. And then we're going to continue to expand nuclear power in this plant because it's proven, it's tried, and we can expand that. I applaud the new permit in Georgia for a new reactor. We're going to have one very soon in my home state. It would be the second in about 30 years of where we permitted a nuclear power plant to provide electricity to this country. But the President, he likes this global warming cap and trade scheme, and he says that under his plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Electricity rates are going to skyrocket, but we've got the ability to build more nuclear power plants and permit those that are underway and provide good, stable electricity in this country. So all the above includes oil, natural gas, energy exploration, offshore, onshore, where we have those resources, expanding nuclear power plants in this country, looking at the things that are tried and true, and allowing the free market, not your tax dollars, America, but the free market to determine the winners and losers with regard to green energy. If it works, if it can be successful, I'll guarantee you there are American investors and worldwide investors that would invest their own hard-earned dollars at their own personal choice to invest in that technology, and they will pick a winner because on the backside they're going to make a profit. But that's not what's happening. This administration is taking your tax dollars and they're making your investment decisions for you to companies like Solyndra. They're picking the winners. They're picking the losers. It's wrong. It's got to stop. And with that, gentleman from Colorado, I'm here, I'll yield back some time.
Well, I thank the gentleman from South Carolina, and I know the gentleman from Arizona is going to be joining us in this debate, this conversation tonight. And you mentioned some quotes, some statements made by Secretary Chu. You talked about the statement where the president had said, under my plan, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. You talk about Secretary Chu talking about how he wants to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. Have you ever heard this president talk about expanding production in the United States, adding U.S. domestic capacity to actually decrease the cost of gasoline?
Gentleman from Colorado, that's a great example. I've never heard him talk about that. You know, the administration talks about the exact opposite. They want us to pay what Europeans pay for oil and natural gas. They want to see us move toward a green energy economy, and they want to create policies, tax policy and regulatory policies that are going to force you as Americans to buy what they want you to buy, and that is an electric car.
And I would point out to the gentleman, too, as he knows, we've seen gas prices increase dramatically around the country. And in South Carolina, I think gas prices have increased 10% from just a year ago. The gentleman from Arizona who joins us now in the conversation is from New Mexico, is seeing tremendous price increases as well. And with that, I yield to the gentleman from